Yeah, I'm just picking up from the first half of my video. As I was making it, um, I finished it, but it turned out it quit recording on my computer. So I'm going to pick it up. And so what I was saying was that working with people in really tough situations, I was working. I've noticed that young men with positive role models in their life, and young women too, but I was mostly working with young men, will change quickly. As a matter of fact, the neighborhood we were working in, the whole neighborhood completely changed as we began to reach out, as we began to talk to people. Um, uh, Me and a bunch of other like-minded people would get together and reach out to the young men who are having challenges in the neighborhood, and they respond really well. Especially when older men will come along and listen to them, get invested in their life, um, help them get jobs, get them involved with positive activities, that people will change really quick. All right, but getting back on topic, so um, several years ago, I quit my job because I was working volunteer in the neighborhood, but to do neighborhood revitalization, I was also working in IT, and Philandro got shot here in St. Paul, Falcon Heights, and the person that shot him was actually a Hispanic police officer. And I realized why this happened, and it wasn't racism, but it certainly was prejudice. I don't remember exactly how much I talked about the difference between racism and prejudice, but back when I was young, you would talk about somebody being prejudiced. And so, anyway, what happens is you have people who don't have exposure to the communities that they're involved with, police officers. If you get, let's give you an example, you get a police officer from the suburbs who hasn't been involved in communities where things are more difficult, predominantly people of color, and all they've heard is stories. They might have gotten prejudices passed on to them. They're afraid, which I think is a big part of what prejudice is. It's fear. It's fear and ignorance. And so they won't know how to respond properly in an emergency situation because everything will be escalated. So what you do is you get the candidate for the police force, you get them to go into the neighborhood, probably set up some kind of program where they can work with an organization like the one that my brother and I started. They go into the neighborhood, they go have a meal at some of the families' houses, they go and they play basketball with the young men on the basketball court, and then some of that, the unknown goes away, and they begin to feel more comfortable around people that are outside of people that they normally hung out with or grew up around, and those preconceived notions, those false ideas begin to fall away. And so people can actually change quickly out of a prejudice situation. Now, I think it's really important to separate what the difference between prejudice and racism is, because racism, on the other hand, is evil. It's where you're going to keep another group of people down and you're going to lift a different group of people up. And there are racist people out there. There are a lot of evil people in the world, but the majority of people may or may not have prejudice. I believe that it's possible for people to have no prejudices whatsoever. I know for myself, I've learned to be very flexible, and I think that there's other people like that out there that will just wait. And for me personally, I can read a person without looking at them externally. I can see their face, their body language. I can read their soul, and Sometimes I'll know how a person is before they even speak a single word, and I've very rarely been wrong. So that's just me. I mean, we all have different giftings. I think the important thing is to stay flexible and not get offended easily, not take things personally, just watch and wait. So, I don't know how much I was going on before my other video got cut, but there were some things I wanted to talk about. If I go to the dentist because I have a rotten tooth, and I get in there and the dentist says that I have cancer, terminal cancer, when all I have is a rotten tooth, that's misdiagnosing the situation. So if you're going to call somebody racist when they're prejudiced, you're calling somebody evil when they're actually flawed. And so a person that is flawed, they can change quickly. People are very, very able to adapt and change if they're approached properly and the proper exposure, kind of like what I was talking about in dealing with young men who had never been exposed to a man who would take interest in their lives will quickly latch onto that and emulate that, and you can have a positive influence on someone's life. And so people that have different types of prejudices, they can quickly be brought out of them. Someone that's racist, they need a come to Jesus moment. They need a conversion. They need repentance. They need something major. They have to go from darkness into light. It's like good and evil. And so to call racism every little thing that people do or that you notice, to label it as racism, is weakening the word. And it's like the old parable of the boy who cried wolf, right? Eventually you keep calling everything racism, then racism loses its meaning. Racism is a terrible, ugly evil that needs to be eradicated, and we've way got it outnumbered. If the people that want good will stand up, then that thing is going to be small and weak, and we can take it out easily. And so let's stop feeding into this wave of calling things out improperly. Let's see things correctly. Identify things the way they are. Be kind, be merciful to people. Help pull them out of their mess. I think that's the only way that this is going to happen. I think that's how things will change. And good always wins. Good will always win. I mean, we may lose the battle, but we win the war. And so the sooner that we come together and stop feeding into false narratives, false ideas, the sooner that we'll be able to put this thing to bed and change things once and for all.